Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our 17th Skype session. And I'm really glad all of you guys are here. Uh, so, a little bit about what we are doing here. We at Impaction, that is Impact Plus Action, are building a community where we can discuss ideas that create a positive impact in the world around us. We know not everyone can quit their jobs and start a business from scratch, even though the world tends to reward the ones that who can. But we believe in incremental change where we can learn from each other and distribute resources in ways that can contribute to the space. And that is why we have these bi-weekly video sessions where we discuss about certain topics and we share with each other so that we can all grow and learn. And it also can give us some inspiration for what we can accomplish in the coming weeks. So I will ask all of you to please introduce yourselves in 2 sentences or less. I will start with myself. I am Tanvi. I am the product manager in Impaction, and I am managing today's video session. And I am based in Boston. Meghna, how about you?
Hi, everyone. I am a UX UI designer on Impaction. I'm based in Des Moines, Iowa. Leah?
Well, I'm a UX UI designer also at Impaction, and I am based in New York.
Great. Thank you. Drew, how about you?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So my name is Drew. I am a marketing specialist for the nonprofit Let's Empower, Advocate, and Do, and I am based out of Washington, D.C.
Great. Thank you. Shivank, how about you?
Hey, hi everyone. My name is Shivan Sharma. I'm currently building a business in Bangalore, India, and this is my second session in the weekly call that Impaction had.
Great. Thank you. Maribel, you want to go next?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Am I mute? No. Yes. So I'm Maribel. I'm based in Washington, D.C. I'm currently teaching social entrepreneurship to high school students. And I also work for Enrich DC as a guest educator. And in terms of mental health, I like to align with educators that care about that and want to continue doing social projects around that.
Great. Thank you. And last but not the least, Anand.
Hello, everyone. I'm Anand, and I work as a data scientist for NASDAQ, and I'm from Boston.
Great. Thank you. Thank you again, guys, for being here. And as you all know, this Skype session will be talking about mental health. And that is because May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And so the topic for today is how various influences and external actions can have an effect on our mental health. So we will be discussing how our experiences with the environment and with others have shaped us to be the people who we are today, in both negative and positive ways. And hopefully this session will help to alleviate the stigma around mental health and will show us ways in which we can nurture the positive in our lives and be a source of positivity around us as well. We did share an article in the email thread, which we wanted to discuss in this video session. This article was from UW Health, which is about how others influence our happiness. And for those who did not get a chance to go through the article, let me just summarize a little bit. So this particular article actually talks about how our happiness isn't just our personal experience. It is actually affected by the individuals around us. And how an individual feels can ripple through his or her social groups and actually influence how the group feels in general. And in some ways, our emotional states are like a virus, which can spread the positive and negative experience to those around us, even with strangers. For example, just think about how your own mood can be impacted by, say, a sales clerk who smiles, is helpful and kind versus one who is really rude and unhelpful. But in both cases, a complete stranger's attitudes influenced your own, and you may in turn pass that attitude to others. And while it may seem now that we are at the mercy of others' attitudes, we do have some control and we can choose how to respond to negativity and be a source of positivity. And that is what we want to discuss in today's call. So I want to start you guys off with a question, which is, can you guys tell us about an experience which had a huge impact on you and shifted your way of thinking?
I can go if no one wants to start first.
Sure, go ahead.
So, as it relates to the topic, on a personal level, one of my English teachers when I was in high school introduced me to the concept of healthy habits in a more systemic way. So I'll turn my camera on. And how if we align certain major habits like our eating habits, our organizational habits, our basically the mindset, the habit of appreciating, and so on. So these kinds of inner habits that we don't usually talk in schools, especially when I was going to high school, doing reflective activities like a minute of silence. Some people may call it meditation. That was very transformational for me as a young person, and more recently, trying to understand meditation through Buddhism has been really interesting and helpful. So I think the more we instill some of those creative and helpful ideas into our curriculum as we're teaching about books or as we're teaching about other important content, the more that expands a young learner's mind. So that I think that's a really helpful experience to share with this group today.
Well, thank you for sharing. Um, in my personal experience, I have seen a lot of this happening as I worked in customer service. I was a receptionist once, so everybody is coming in. I'm welcoming everyone, and as people start coming in, I can tell that my responses change for every single individual. If somebody comes in and they're very nice and they say, "Oh well, good morning, how are you?" It lightens up something inside of you that makes you respond in a more positive way. Not just so much me having to smile myself as part of my job and trying to well, your job as a receptionist is also to just have the smile on, greet people, and make sure that they're having a good time. But that's not always the case when you have somebody coming in and their mood is down. You can tell it right off without them even having to speak. You can tell it from their eyes, you can tell it from their facial expressions. That is something very natural that we just notice it. Somebody on on a day to day can come up to you and say, "Well, I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm happy. Nothing is happening," but you can tell from their facial expressions. Now, don't get me wrong. There's people who can actually hide it very well, but for the most part, we can tell these things. One of the experiences that I've had, where like, which has had the biggest impact on me, is being part of a peer counseling group. Um, I had clients coming in, and it was always something different. It could be a student coming in who's just simply really stressed about finals, or we could have somebody coming in who was just looking to talk to someone. You know, on a really good day, a client would come in and simply share their day. But on days that were like really hard to handle, it's when somebody else who comes in is having a really, really bad day, and they start sharing that with you, even though it's not something that is happening to you. Their life experiences and the way that they share it is heavy, and you carry that with you throughout the rest of your day. And I myself, I meditate, and I agree with you, Maribel. It's a really enlightening thing. I also like to journal and work through my ideas. I find that that helps quite a lot.
Yeah,
Anybody
Thank
else
I
would
you.
have
like
had
to
a
go?
yeah, I've had a similar experience of like sharing stories because my roommate is an academic advisor. So he would share the struggles that he has seen other students face during finals week or in general trying to manage their curriculum better and having these like problems which I was not aware of. And that awareness made me cherish my mental health a lot more before I took it really for granted versus me trying to be aware and saying it could have very easily happened to me and I should take care of my mental health better. It was like more of like how people, when they get a health scare, they really try and make sure that they live better so that they do not face something like that. It was a similar experience with me just by listening to like my roommates sharing stories of other students struggling through a lot of these issues, and that had a huge impact on me to realize that no, I should take care of my mental health at this point more than me just delaying it and getting buried in some like buried in completely work or doing things like that. So that like yeah, I agree with Leah's point about like someone sharing a story has a huge like that burden can very easily translate to like a lot of people.
To that, I guess I would like to say that in my case, that is a very extreme situation in which you can see how the things that we share with other people has an effect on our thoughts and our feelings as we go through our day. Because it's not just in that moment that it's being shared, it's something that you will be carrying on until you're able to work through it.
Yeah, and just like you shared, Leo, that you were a receptionist and you always have to be polite and smiling. Even I worked as a bartender in school, and I had the same experience, especially when you yourself are having a bad day and you still have to keep up the smile. It becomes really difficult after a point. But what I saw was the most difficult to cope up with was when someone else, like a customer, is having a bad day and they kind of take it out on you.
Yes.
And they miss the point that it was either their fault or it was just an honest mistake or whatever, but they kind of take take it out on you, and I just never understood it. It took me a lot of time to still keep smiling through that, and I had to talk to my managers a little bit, like, how do you do this? This is correct procedure. Eventually I got it, but that is something people don't understand. There was this one time where this guy wanted a beer. I don't know what happened, and he was kind of getting frustrated because of me. Maybe I was being too slow or maybe being too fast. I don't know. And he paid and he went away. I and anyone who came there could see that I was a little disturbed by this. But there was this another customer also sitting in the bar, and he realized the fact that because of what that guy said, I'm being affected, and he can, and he kind of came up to me and told me that it's okay that this happens, if and because he was also a bartender once, so that really helped me, understand that this is just a part and parcel of this job, and kind of I got used to it then.
Yeah, that actually touches on that ripple effect that that article was talking about, right?
I,
So I completely agree with all of you on how like our mood affects everyone else, and I saw a lot of similar things. Not only when I was a rehab tech, I worked with a lot of patients that came with mental disabilities as well, and so their mood would be a little bit more sporadic, or their mental health would be a little bit more challenging to work with than some of the other patients who had a healthier mental health. And what was interesting was that if I was having a bad day on when I was working with those patients, even if I did have a bad day, they could sense it as well. And so if I shared that with them, they actually felt like they were helping me, um, with working through my own challenges, to the best of their abilities, even if it was to their level of understanding, by trying to make it so that it's easily comprehensible to them in a way that would be also kind of inviting. It allowed them to feel like they were more of like a friend than more of like a patient provider relationship. So I think that this idea of like 3 degrees of separation not only goes to the point of individuals that's in your close family network, but also individuals that you're working with, if it's like a patient or like someone that's coming in, at a in a clothing store, things like that.
Yeah, that's also what the article was talking about the 3 degrees of separation, and how our mood kind of spreads through a lot more people, a lot more connections. And well, I guess what I also want to know is, what are the barriers currently that kind of stop us to uh, take a step back and think that our actions or our decisions will affect someone else? Like, what are the barriers to promoting mental health right now?
Can I just add something to that question when
Yeah,
we're answering it?
sure.
So it'd be interesting to, if you know, to state like which lens you're looking through when you're looking at that, and offering the idea, because there are so many ways to think of it. You can look at it through culture and family, through psychological or behavior, or through structures and systems or individuals lens. So it would be really interesting to know like which perspective you come from.
That's a really good lens to put on it, Maribel, because actually one of the things that I wanted to say was culture, I think, plays a big part in acting as a barrier to addressing or acknowledging any sort of mental health discussions. In a place like India, it's definitely getting much, much better now, but people don't want to deal with anything like depression or anxiety or any of those issues, because it's like, why do you want me to go to a therapist? Like, I'm not crazy. And it's just, so it has to be one extreme or the other. So that's definitely a big barrier culturally.
I kind of want to also kind of piggyback off on that a little bit, and quote, or not quote, but reference a psychologist named Dr. Brene Brown. And she's worked extensively on empathy, shame, gratitude, guilt, and those types of feelings, and that surrounding mental health. And one of our biggest things is talking about how we live in a culture, we live in a society where vulnerability and showing vulnerability is shown as a sign of weakness, when in reality, the more vulnerable you are, the more strength you have, because it challenges you to build your confidence, and it challenges you to build your courage. And so I think that this idea, the stigma behind mental health, is also this notion that the more vulnerable we are, the more weakness we are showing, and that roots in its own toxicity, I think, across societies. But the more that we challenge that from a cultural perspective, from a research perspective, I think the more that it'll go down.
Yeah, and just to talk about Brene Brown, please read her books if you get a chance. She is just fantastic, and she really touches on this vulnerability stuff, and it's very insightful.
Yeah, just to chip in a little bit to that, guys. It's a very funny thing. It's the double standards that there is with mental health. I myself, I have been to therapy, and I was, let's see how young I was, 19. I was 19 when I started seeing a therapist, and I have to say it was the best decision I have made in my life. Until this day, I stay in contact with my therapist, and whenever things are going great, she's one of the first people who show up in my mind. Um, I write to her every now and then, and I visit her office every other day just to check in, just to see how she's doing. It goes from her every single week checking in with me to see how I'm doing, to me going back to her to thank her for everything that she's done for me. I, the person that I am today, I very much thank her for all the progress that I've made. Um, yeah, it's a very vulnerable position. I remember that without even realizing sometimes, I would find myself sitting in the room and just tears would just start coming out of my eyes, and it wasn't something that I was expecting. It wasn't something that I went there for. But as you start working through a lot of the things that you're going through, not just on a daily basis, but like things that you have been saving up from, could be years behind, or it could just be like months. But when you get to work through these things in your mind, it's a self-learning process, because all these thoughts that you've been having in your head, they're now coming out. They're coming out, and you get to work through them, and you get to say, well, was this the right approach that I've been given to it, or was there something different that I could have done? Um, if anybody would like to say or share something, I'd be open to hear it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I actually had to seek help with myself about a year ago, and it was a big move. And talking to everyone's points about vulnerability, about and your point about going to someone and feeling grateful for getting that help, and not expecting so much emotion to be processed in that space. I think it touches on an important barrier, which is the question I want to go back to as well, which is that when do you know when to seek professional help, and how, especially if you're working with others, customers, children and youth, just variety of people that you can work with. What are those indicators, those small red flags, or even the yellow ones, right, before they're even red, that show, okay, you need some maybe a day off, or you need to get extra sleep because you're going through a lot, or you need to maybe speak to someone and have someone just give you advice or at least listen. And then at what stage do you seek professional help? And one really helpful way was through a professor at AU. Her name is Rosario, and she taught a course on resiliency. And she shared it was like a spectrum of stressors, and depending on what level a person was, they color coded it. So the stigma was out. Instead of saying like, "Oh, you need help," and this was actually, I have to go back to find out exactly where they implemented this, but I believe it was for train when soldiers are being trained, and they would say, "Oh, you're yellow right now," so that meant, or "I think you're yellow," and so that meant they had to talk about what next steps to take so they can be back at a emotionally stable place. And then the red zone being, maybe it's time to seek professional help, or even before the red, maybe the yellow. So that chart was a really helpful way to visualize and to get past that barrier. And maybe there are other things out there that can also take away the stigma, but also help people in leadership roles know when it's time to do what.
That is actually a really good question. I have struggled that with myself, that when do you actually know that you need help? Is it so being coming from India, this has always been that if you are being a little too moody or a little too stressed, people say, ah, it's a phase. Either you are a teenager that time or you have just entered the workforce. People say, ah, it's a phase, it'll go away. So I know that sometimes it is not a phase, but when do you know that this is actually just a phase? Is that I don't know, the current environment that's making you do that? It's either it's a hormones, what is going on, or do you actually need professional help, or do you not even professional, you need to go and talk to someone about how you're feeling and what's going on through your head. So I I think having such an idea of color coding the things, it's pretty interesting because I feel that kind of removes the point where you go and ask someone that, hey, do you think I need help? It kind of, it's a self-learning kind of a thing that you're aware and proactive about it. But how do we make this universal?
Can I say something on that?
Sure.
So basically, mental illness or depression are the process. It happens on a gradual basis. Okay, so basically, it's most dependently on me how I react on it. Okay, so if let's say if it's just starting, okay, maybe if I'm overthinking on I'm in such a point, okay, that actually creates an inhibition me to share with somebody. If it can be cured at that level only, it will not grow much, right? So basically, what I believe is, I mean,
Could you repeat
one more
that
thing,
a
and I'll
little?
conclude. Okay. Yeah. So basically, this happened with me when I was in my, in my high school. So I was getting admission into an engineering college. So that time, I realized that success and failure are kind of a two parameter that define my mental illness. Okay. So if I'm successful, okay, that can become an ego in myself. Okay. If I'm a failure, that gets into a depression or
So there's a thing called mental health first aid, which is basically CPR for mental health training. And so it gives you like an action plan on how to assess any warning signs for someone who might need to seek professional help. And on their website, they have the action plan in a blog article. But if you guys want, I can write it down what the action plan is in the comments in the comments section, so that way you guys have like a understanding of what to look out for um, to help someone else. And sometimes you can even do this for yourself if you're experiencing or you know someone experiencing some challenge, some mental health challenges. Does that sound okay?
Yep,
Yeah, that
that's
sounds
awesome.
great.
Great. Awesome.
Yeah, we are looking for more resources that also that we can share. That's great. Thank you, Drew. Ron,
Shivang, do you want to try
try
again?
again? Yeah.
okay. Uh, is it audible now?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, what I was sharing was basically success and failure are like the two parameters which define somebody's mental illness or maybe a mental happiness. So, uh, are you guys getting in trouble hearing now?
No, you're fine for now.
Yeah.
Oh, so awesome. So yeah, so basically you can start a day with watching a good video, probably uh, a few minutes for a meditation to know and understand yourself. Where are you? A self introspection kind of a thing. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So a little efforts on a daily basis will actually lead you to a point where you can see yourself mentally fit person. So that's all I want to share. Yeah.
I agree with you. The happiness, I mean, happiness, or you could be happy or you could not be happy, and that does not say that you're in a good state of mind per se. So yes, they're both a parameter because you can be happy and like you said, it alters your ego. It could make it bigger, or you could be upset about something and it could bring your mood down. But see, being happy does not entail a good state of mind. And to answer the question that kind of comes up from like very different perspectives. We, when it comes to like extreme situations or like something that becomes like a little bit harder to ignore, that's the only times where we can see other individuals needing mental health help, right? But on a daily basis, some of the things that we can do to help ourselves and help anybody is to find a good community, find a support group, people that we can relate to, people that can relate to us, people that we can share with, and people that will share with us. Because that back and forth sort of situation helps us grow as people. People sharing with us helps us see another person's perspective, and us sharing with other people can help us work through what we're going through. Um, if you guys have any more questions, I'll be happy to help you answer them.
Yeah, in my case, when I thought I needed to like change or do something about my mental health was because of work. So normally I was very like when I used to go come back home, I used to only start thinking of work in the morning, like the next day when I'm in the shower. But slowly I could not make that like switch. And when I came home, I continuously thought of work even when I was going to bed. And that is what I started doing that even when I got up. And that is what alarmed me, saying that this should not be happening. And I should be able to switch my mind off the work that I'm doing so that I can perform better there. So that made me realize to think it's like, hey, this is not an everyday for me. Like before, like as I've worked for almost 2 years now, when I was in school, and even though it was a more like I had more things to do, I did not have that same feeling that I was not able to cut off my thoughts for work. Like I was very easily able to switch it. And that made me realize saying, no, things don't look like okay. And that is when I started using like I read Bill Gates' blog on Headspace, and I tried out Headspace, and it really helped me like make that cut where like a few minutes on Headspace really gave my mind the break it needed. So like the steps are really great for me to realize, as I was like I could understand that about my mind because I started feeling tired, but there are some people who won't be able to quantify like this thing, as it's like it's not really a state of mental health, but like those are very early. I thought those were very early indicators for my mind to really not take a break, and it should grow up for me to for me it to be really stressful. And it's like these are very small things that like you realize in the shower, like when you're like realizing the fact that you're in the shower, you're not supposed to think of work, and I was still thinking of work, and I was like, no.
That's actually a great segue to my next question is that I would like all of us to like go around and kind of share our mental health routine, if there is any, or something that you guys want to start or recommend to each other. That would be great. Yeah.
So my routine starts when I go to sleep. So before I go to sleep, I sort of take care of those thoughts that have been just running around in my head. And I will either write them down or I help myself work through them. I will either say them out loud or I will simply think through them and see what my choices are. What can I do with them? And after that, I go on Headspace. I listen to a few of the videos of anything that may be related to me in that moment. It could be maybe I couldn't focus today. I had too much in my head. There's something for that. There's something for literally everything. And given that I'm a student, I got Headspace for a year for only $10. Right? It was the best investment that I did this year. And they also have the little podcasts that help you go to sleep. So I use those as well. Then the next day in the morning, if I wake up early, or even when I do not, I will sit down and I'll meditate. And throughout my day, I will speak to my friends. If I am having a tough day, I will call anyone. I'll call my mom. I can call my friends. Uh, if my dad is working, I'll text them. But I kind of make sure that I let that out. I don't hold it back in. I don't hold it deep inside of me and save it for later. Um, if somebody's having a tough day and they reach out to me, I listen because I know that they need that. As much as I know that I need it myself, I know that other people need it as well. And putting yourself in that sort of situation where you're available to other people helps helps as well. It's like a two-way street. It's never a one-way street. Um, but yeah, that's it for me. Anybody who would like to go next?
I support all his points about Headspace. I really think it's a very worthwhile investment.
Yeah, go ahead, Sean. Such politeness
So,
here. I love it.
I'll, so I'll just share. Just try to be more organized. Okay. I mean, if the things are messy around your environment, you might think. I mean, in your mind also, the things are getting messy. So just try to. I mean, the first thing that I do is to try to make my bed as soon as I wake up. So, so like
Agreed.
entire day like goes in a very organized way, step by step. So that's the. I mean, the one way you can achieve, a positive state of mind.
Yes, it does.
And yeah, one more thing just I want to add. Just, I mean, what do you say? Analysis leads to paralysis. So a lot of analysis on certain point actually leads to paralysis. So just avoid that. I think that'll be pretty good. Yeah.
I like that.
I'm another huge supporter of Headspace. Apparently, Headspace is the all-achieving app in this conversation. But yeah, definitely meditation is super helpful, and I know a lot of people think they can't sit still for a long time, and I'm one of those people. But with like 10 minutes, I can sit still for 10 minutes. Um, but along with that, I listen to talking about podcasts, Sleep With Me, which has gotten very, very famous in the last year. It's just this guy basically telling adults bedtime stories. It's awesome. It's meant to help you drift off. So he talks about complete, absolute rubbish, and it's awesome. His voice is great, so that's a good routine to have. And yeah, I journal too in the morning when I wake up, just to get your thoughts out of your head and onto another platform, so you don't constantly keep thinking about it. Speaking of analysis and paralysis.
I agree with everyone here. And one thing that I came across while I was going through like my self-learning curve is that health is not only physical health, where people think that if you eat healthy, you're healthy, and that's the end of it. Well, really, health is spiritual, which comes with, it does not really have to be like a religious aspect. It could be simple meditation. Uh, Also comes mental health, but mental health is a really, really big aspect. And there's research that depending on our state of mind and the way we're thinking and the way we're feeling, our organs inside of us, they get affected in the way that they work. It's really interesting research, and that's something that I'll be looking into once this semester is over.
Yeah, do share that with us as well. Maybe we'll take some pointers away.
Yeah.
Drew, you wanna? Yeah, see, good. Raising hands.
Yeah, so I am also one of the Headspace junkies as well, a daily user. And I think I got to a point where I was able to actually copy the Headspace meditation on my own without following the guided meditation. So I was really happy about that. But I think what also is a really good tool for me is to listen to classical music, like soft classical music. that has really been a big part of my life, because growing up, I learned a lot about classical music from my teachers, and listening to something like Bach or Beethoven or Mozart or one of my favorites right now is it's a Japanese pianist. Shoot, I can't remember the name. He's the creator of River Flows in You. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that. It's called Yuruma. The artist's name is Yuruma. And so I listen to a lot of classical music to help me kind of calm down and meditate to it.
Everyone. Yeah, I thought that a piece of what everyone is doing, I've explored before. I can't say I have one specific routine, to be honest, although I try to meditate. I do find it difficult. I have a hard time sitting. It's still a practice, but the real practice that I'm trying to learn is the practice of life. So the real routines that I honestly have to say are actually what I do almost every day are different than what I want to do. So I want to sit down and meditate 20 minutes a day. I do that sometimes. I don't always do it. So one thing I always align in values, worldview, and the more I do that, the more I find inner peace. And everything really goes under one thing, which I call it, and it's from Thich Nhat Hanh's book about love. He called in the prayer, he calls it rekindling the joy inside of us every day. So that joy piece is important to me. I think it's important to all of us. When we forget to when we forget to play, or we forget to find things that and do things that we find joy in, the stressors in life and the hardships become much more difficult to work through. So sometimes it might look like a day of, thinking about the purpose and meaning in the work that I want to do or that I'm doing, even in small moments, tedious work, trying to tie that small act into the overall bigger picture and how that's meaningful overall. Breathing exercises. So maybe I don't have 20 minutes a day, but if I'm stressed out, like remembering, oh, I still have my breath with me, I'm going to actually breathe for this 1 minute instead of going on that phone call and losing my mind with that person. So be kinder to customer service people, right? Or stretching 5 minutes every day. It's so small and it helps us because we feel all the stress we carry in different parts of our bodies. What I really want to do is salsa dance like I used to do every week. I can't always do that, so I stretch 5 minutes. There's reading encouraging words every now and then. That might be in the form of prayer, but prayer is not necessarily the main thing. It could be other encouraging words from people and authors. And really, I think an important thing we forget is making progress towards solving a major problem and barrier that we have in our own lives. Like, short breathing can help, but if I continually have that problem and I'm blind to it and I don't seek additional perspective on it, I'm going to continue having that stress because I'm blind to what's in my life and I'm not making progress there. And music, like some people said, I like most recently the Rachel Project. He's a Jewish singer who collaborates with people from different cultures, and his music I find very beautiful. Also, like I Google like Reiki Zen meditation music, and that's super calm, but could put me to sleep. So maybe something like hip hop lo-fi is pretty cool too. So yeah, music is important. There's also, for people that I can't sit still, there's also something called 5 Rhythms Dance, and it takes you through 5 different rhythms that supposedly the creator of this said you have to go through every day. And depending on our preference, we might only dance to one type of rhythm or 2 types of rhythm. So these are all just really interesting things. Journaling, I love the people that do that, by the way. I'm so impressed. I try, and I can not do it every day. But art I tend to be in every now and then to do. So there's so many different things that we can do, and I think what we can come up with this or come from this is knowing that there's so many ways to find well-being, and there's no one specific way for each and every single person, but we all have to discover what that is.
Drew, yeah, you wanted to say something. Go ahead.
Just really quick tip also that kind of goes back to what Maribel was saying about trying to, like, before going into events, to try and like take a moment of like a breath before going in, um, just so that way you kind of calibrate yourself from like one event to the other. There's this really great performance coach named Brendan Bouchard who came up with this meditation technique where you spend 2 minutes, and for 1 minute you breathe for 4 counts, and then you release tension for 4 counts. And the idea is that for that 1 minute, you just want to release the tension in your muscles. And then for the next minute, you think about an intention that you want to set up for what you're about to do. So if you're going from one meeting to the next, in between that meeting, you take off 2 minutes. 1 minute is to release tension from the last meeting, and then the next minute, you think about setting an intention for how you want the next meeting to go. And you visualize and create affirmations surrounding that intention. So that way you can start creating and manifesting the experience that you would like to have, instead of still thinking about the experience that you did have in the previous meeting. So that could be something else to also kind of have little micro breaks in your day between different events.
Could you add the person's name in the chat if you don't mind?
Yes.
Yeah, so many resources. This is
Yeah.
great.
I'm hearing a lot of
And
great things.
yeah, and I want to
Like,
respect everyone.
I want to put it in doc.
Sorry, what did you say, Maribel?
Oh, there's a document, a Google document. If everyone wants to put everything in one place, and then I guess we'll add the emails or ask for access.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I'll
And so we
start
can all
that
have
document.
access.
Yeah.
Maribel already started it. She added
Oh,
Yeah.
she did.
there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you, Maribel. Well, I guess our time is up, but thank you so much, guys. This was such a great conversation. I kind of get the feeling that we are still not done. So
Yes.
we can definitely continue this conversation offline on our Facebook group or on myimpaction.com on the idea forum. That's great. And for anyone who wants to go back and watch this video or wants to share this video, so for our viewers, please go to myimpaction.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. But thank you so much, guys. This was great.
Thank you everyone for sharing.
Thank you everyone
Thank
for
you.
sharing.
Thank you, everyone.